Peace is an anomaly. Violence is the default state of nature. Nowhere is this truer than at Strixhaven University. This school wasn't built just to teach magic. It was built to bury a history so bloody that the world has tried to erase it from memory. To the students walking its halls, Strixhaven looks like a paradise. A world of floating stones, manicured hedges, and infinite libraries. But that perfection is just a mask. And one man decided it was time to rip that mask off. Tonight, we are digging up the truth. We are looking at the 5 colleges that define this world, the tragic ambition of the professor who betrayed them, and the return of a god of war known only as the Blood Avatar. To understand why someone would want to destroy this place, you first have to understand what it represents. Strixhaven isn't just a school, it is a philosophy. It is built on the idea that opposing forces, life and death, chaos and order, art and math, can coexist in harmony if they are studied with discipline. The campus is divided into 5 distinct colleges, each founded by an elder dragon who mastered these conflicting forces. These aren't just dormitories, they are cultures. First, let's talk about Silverquill. Founded by the dragon Shadric Silverquill, this is the College of Eloquence. It represents the clash between white and black mana, the magic of light and shadow. But at Silverquill, they don't see this as a battle of good and evil. They see it as the power of the word. Silverquill students are the debaters, the poets, and the leaders of Strixhaven. They are impeccably dressed, sharp-witted, and utterly ruthless in conversation. They believe that magic is about influence. Why throw a fireball when you can destroy your enemy's reputation with a single sentence? Their magic manifests as living ink. A Silverquill mage can speak a poem that heals wounds, bathing their allies in radiant light. Or they can whisper an insult that physically cuts you, summoning lances of shadow ink to pierce your armor. Their mascot is the Inkling, a creature made of pure shadow and fluid, forming into jagged shapes that fly on wings of words. To a Silverquill student, the pen isn't just mightier than the sword. The pen is the sword. Next is Prismari. Founded by the dragon Galazeth Prismari, this is the College of Elemental Arts. It represents the conflict between blue and red mana, intellect and emotion. For Prismari, magic is not a science, it is a performance. If Silverquill is the debate team, Prismari is the theatre department. If the theatre department could accidentally level a city block. These mages believe that magic is the ultimate form of self-expression. They wield fire and ice, lightning and water, weaving them together into spectacular displays. A Prismari mage doesn't just cast a spell, they compose a masterpiece. They might spend weeks perfecting a spell that creates a sculpture of frozen lightning or a symphony of exploding fireballs. They are passionate, volatile, and flashy. Their mascots are elementals, chaotic bursts of pure creative energy that look like walking storms. For Prismari, the only sin is being boring. Then we have Witherbloom. Founded by the ancient dragon Belladros Witherbloom, this college occupies the murky swamplands of the campus. It represents the duality of green and black mana, life and death. Witherbloom students are the goths of Strixhaven. They don't mind the mud, they don't mind the smell of rot. Their motto is, get your hands dirty. While the other colleges are arguing about theory or putting on light shows, Witherbloom mages are in the swamp, brewing potions from vampire blood and fungal spores. They understand a fundamental truth. Life feeds on death. You cannot have a garden without fertilizer, and usually that fertilizer used to be alive. They can heal the sick with incredible herbal remedies, or they can wither a forest with a touch. Their mascots are pests, grotesque, insectoid creatures that scuttle around the swamp. They are ugly, they are smelly, and Witherbloom students treat them like beloved pets. Fourth is Lawhold. Founded by Velomachus Lawhold, this is the College of Archaeomancy. It combines red and white mana, chaos and order through the lens of history. But don't mistake them for dusty librarians. Lawhold students are adventurers. They believe that the past isn't dead, it's just waiting to be woken up. Lawhold mages don't just read history books. They rip the spirits of ancient kings out of the ground and interview them. They dive into ruins, animating statues and summoning the ghosts of wars long past. They are obsessed with the flow of time and the lessons of history. They believe in leaving no stone unturned, which usually involves telekinetically throwing those stones at anyone who gets in their way. Their mascots are the spirits, the literal ghosts of the past, bound to the service of the present. And finally, Quandrix. Founded by Tanazir Quandrix, this is the College of Numeromancy. It represents green and blue mana, nature and intellect. For Quandrix, magic is math. They believe that reality is just a series of equations waiting to be solved. If you can understand the numbers behind the universe, you can change them. A Quandrix mage looks at a tree and sees the fractal geometry of its leaves. They look at a creature and see the biological algorithm of its growth. They wield magic that fractures reality. They can summon creatures made of pure geometry, turn an enemy into a mathematical abstraction, or grow a massive beast by simply multiplying its size. Their mascots are fractals, artificial life forms made of living equations that grow infinitely if left unchecked. These 5 colleges coexist in a delicate, often competitive balance. They represent the height of magical civilization. But civilization is a fragile thing, and before there was Strixhaven, there was the Blood Age. Thousands of years ago, before the dragons founded the school, the plane of Arcavios was a nightmare. The history books call it the Blood Age, but even that name feels sanitized. It was an era where warlords didn't study magic. They weaponized it in its crudest form. There were no debates, no art projects, no math equations. There was only blood. Mages used life force magic to fuel endless wars, ripping the vitality out of the land and its people to power their spells. It was a time of survival of the fittest, where the only law was strength. The 5 founder dragons looked down upon this carnage and decided it had to stop. They intervened, not to rule, but to teach. They ended the wars, founded the university, and gathered all the forbidden spells of the Blood Age, the magic of pure violence, and locked them away in the Biblioplex. They ushered in an era of peace. But peace creates resentment. For some, peace looks a lot like weakness. Enter Extus Narr. Extus is not an invader from another world. He is not a demon. He is a product of Strixhaven itself. He was a brilliant mage, a graduate of Silverquill who believed in the superiority of magic above all else. He followed the rules. He climbed the ladder. He became a professor renowned for his command of magical theory. His ambition was singular. He wanted to become the Oracle of Strixhaven. The Oracle is the most powerful position in the university. They are the voice of the founder dragons, the conduit through which the dragons speak to the faculty. It is a position of immense prestige and power. Extus believed he was the only logical choice. He had the lineage, the power, and the will. But when the time came for the dragons to choose their new oracle, they looked at Extus Narr. They saw his power. They saw his brilliance, but they also saw his arrogance. They saw a man who craved authority, not wisdom. So they passed him over. Instead, they chose a young, optimistic mage named Jadzi. For Extus, this wasn't just a career setback. It was an existential insult. He didn't see it as a judgment on his character. He saw it as a symptom of the university's decline. He looked at Strixhaven and saw a place that had become soft. He believed that by burying the Blood Age, the dragons had neutered magic. He believed that true power, the power to rule, had been forgotten in favor of safe, sanitized study. He decided that if the university wouldn't crown him, he would burn it to the ground. Extus left the faculty and went underground. He formed the Oriq, a secret society of mages who hid their identities behind golden masks. These weren't random thugs. They were the rejects, the failures, and the ambitious students who felt Strixhaven was holding them back. They were the ones who wanted to learn the forbidden spells, the ones who believed that ethics were just chains for the weak. But a cult wasn't enough to destroy the founder dragons. Extus needed a weapon that predated them. He needed a god of the Blood Age. He began to research the Blood Avatar. The Blood Avatar is a manifestation of pure war. It is not a creature of biology. It is a creature of concept. It is the physical embodiment of the violence that once ruled Arcavios. To summon it requires a ritual of immense complexity and a power source that defies imagination. Extus found that power source in the heart of the school, the Snarl. Deep beneath the Hall of Oracles lies a knot of magical energy where the mana of the world collides. It is the glowing, unstable core of the campus. It is dangerous and infinite. Extus planned to tap into this Snarl to fuel his ritual, ripping the power out of the school to summon the very thing the school was built to destroy. But you can't just walk into the Hall of Oracles. The campus is guarded by the Dragon's Guard. Elite battle mages trained to defend the school from any threat. Extus needed a distraction. He needed chaos. He chose the day of the Mage Tower Championship. Mage Tower is the Super Bowl of Strixhaven. It is the one day where all 5 colleges come together, not to study, but to scream. The game is simple, brutal, and chaotic. 2 teams enter the massive Strixhaven Stadium. Each team has a mascot sitting on a high tower at their end of the field. The goal is to fight your way across the arena, steal the opponent's mascot, and bring it back to your side. Magic is legal. Combat is encouraged. The only rule is don't kill the audience. On the day of the attack, the stadium was packed to capacity. It was the championship match, Prismarine versus Silverquill. The air was electric. High in the stands, students were cheering, waving banners. On the field, the game was a spectacle of violence and art. Prismarine mages were blasting fire and ice, surfing on waves of elemental energy. Silverquill mages were weaving spells of shadow, shouting incantations that disrupted their opponent's concentration. The crowd roared as a Prismarine mage intercepted an inkling, dodging a blast of shadow magic. The Dragon's Guard, usually so vigilant, were watching the field, mesmerized by the sport. It was the perfect blind spot. While the campus was distracted by the game, the Oriq made their move. But they didn't come alone. Extus knew that his mages might not be enough to hold off the faculty once the alarm was raised. He needed a chaotic element. He recruited an outsider, a planeswalker named Lurker. Lurker is a bonder from the harsh world of Ikoria. He has the unique ability to mentally bond with monsters, controlling them like puppets. And he brought with him a nightmare, the Mage Hunters. Mage Hunters are terrifying insectoid horrors. Imagine a creature that looks like a cross between a wolf and a praying mantis, covered in glowing blue spines. They are biological weapons designed to kill wizards. Their carapaces are resistant to magic. Their spines glow when they sense a spell being cast. They hunt by tracking magical energy. As the Mage Tower game reached its climax, the Mage Hunters were unleashed. They swarmed the campus. The cheers in the stadium turned to screams as these creatures scaled the walls. Students fleeing the game ran straight into the jaws of the Oriq. It was chaos. The faculty scrambled to organize a defense, but they were separated, confused, and fighting an enemy that was immune to many of their spells. While the Dragon's Guard fought for their lives against the Mage Hunters, Extus Narr walked into the Biblioplex unopposed. He fought his way down to the Hall of Oracles, slaughtering the few guards who stood watch. He entered the Chamber of the Snarl, the forbidden heart of the university. He opened the ancient texts, and he began to chant. The energy of the Snarl turned from a glowing blue to a violent, sickening crimson. The air in the room grew heavy, filling with the metallic scent of copper and old death. The walls shook. From the vortex of magic, the blood avatar began to pull itself into reality. It was a titan, a massive, four-armed monstrosity clad in ancient, rusted bronze armor. It wielded weapons that had tasted the blood of empires, swords and axes that looked like they had been dug out of a mass grave. It had no face, only a helm of iron. It was the Blood Age reborn. The only people close enough to stop him were two first-year students, Will and Rowan Kenrith. The royal twins of Eldraine had come to Strixhaven to learn, to find their own path. Now, they were the last line of defense between Extus and the end of the world. They burst into the Hall of Oracles. But they were children fighting a god. Extus, fueled by the infinite power of the Snarl, was untouchable. He laughed at them. He swatted Will aside with a wave of his hand. Rowan, seeing her brother hurt, let her rage take over. She tried to siphon power directly from the Snarl, pulling the red mana into her own body to blast Extus. For a moment, she was a conduit of pure power. Her eyes glowed with lightning. She unleashed a blast that sent Extus flying into the wall. But the human body isn't meant to hold the power of a Snarl. The magic burned her out, leaving her collapsed and helpless on the stone floor. The ritual was complete. The blood avatar stepped fully into the room. Extus Narr picked himself up. He stood before the creature, his arms spread wide. He had done it. He had proven that he was stronger than the founder dragons. He had summoned the ultimate weapon. He looked at the creature, expecting it to bow. He expected to lead this new army of chaos. But Extus Narr had made a fatal miscalculation. He was a scholar, a man of logic and order. He assumed that because he cast the spell, he was the master. But he had forgotten the nature of the Blood Age. Violence has no master. The blood avatar is not a soldier. It is not a golem. It is a force of nature. It does not obey. It destroys. Will Kenrith, bleeding and broken on the floor, realized the truth. You cannot fight an avalanche. You can only guide it. He crawled over to his sister. He realized that Extus's spell wasn't finished. The binding wasn't complete. He and Rowan combined their remaining magic, his ice and her lightning. They didn't try to destroy the avatar. They cast a spell to complete the binding ritual Extus had started, just enough to turn the creature's gaze. The blood avatar stopped. It turned its iron helm. It looked down at Extus Narr. The leader of the Oriq had a split second to realize his mistake. He saw the red halo of the binding spell snap into place, directed not by him, but by the students he had dismissed. The creature's massive hand closed around him. There was a sickening crunch. Extus Narr, the man who wanted to be the Oracle, was crushed by the very history he tried to resurrect. But the creature wasn't done. The binding was imperfect. As the spell began to collapse and pull the avatar back into the Snarl, the monster lashed out one final time. It swung its massive, rusted sword. It struck Will Kenrith. The blade cleaved through his leg, severing it at the knee. The impact shattered the floor. The Snarl imploded, dragging the blood avatar back into the void, taking the body of Extus Narr with it. In the aftermath, Strixhaven began to heal. The Oriq were scattered without their leader. The Mage Hunters were hunted down by the faculty, but the scars remained. Will Kenrith survived, but he now walks with an intricate prosthetic made of ice and latticework, a permanent reminder of the price of their victory. A statue now stands in the Biblioplex. It changes its face every hour, cycling through the visages of those lost in the attack. It is a silent reminder that the peace of Strixhaven is fragile, that the manicured hedges and the polite debates are just a thin veneer over a world that is, by nature, violent. Extus Narr wanted to save magic from weakness. He wanted to return the world to the glory of the Blood Age. Instead, he became a footnote in a history book, a warning to every student who walks the halls. You know, it turns out that when you go looking for ancient gods of war, you usually find them. The problem is, they usually find you too. I really appreciate you joining me for this look at the tragedy of the Oriq. If you want to see more lore from the multiverse, hitting that like button and subscribing is the best way to support the channel. Until next time.